Yeah, seriously? Wow. Okay. Apparently there was an error. Very good. This has never happened. There we go. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Paranormal, the New Normal. I'm your host, as always, Jeremy, here trying to, make the world a little more normal. Does it ever happen? Oh, Lord, no. We try, but shit don't get done. What can I say? But of course, I never walk this road alone. I bring with me a guest to help me traverse this path. My guest tonight is Emily O'Neill, an evidential psychic medium and intuitive healer, and probably a whole lot more I'm not even thinking about yet, but we'll get to all that in a minute. First things first, how you doing tonight, Emily?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Well, I'm happy to have you on. Always love me a good psychic medium and healers, so I've had a lot of fun with them on the show. I guess the first question I ask everybody is, what brought you down the path towards the paranormal?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I am just a super curious person that likes to learn about a lot of different things. And um, so obviously, how can you not be interested in the paranormal? And not to be cliche, but like growing up as a kid in the 90s, the X-Files didn't help. Like watching the X-Files, Unsolved Mysteries, all those things like that. It gets you thinking about stuff and that maybe there's more to the world than what we think or what we can see. So how can you not get captivated by that?
Very true, and as any listener of the show knows, I am a huge X-Files nerd, so we 100% agree on that one. But yeah, I mean, I could actually see you pulling off Scully at like a cosplay thing. I can see it.
I would
So
don't tempt me.
I can see it. But so what experiences first? Like, what were the first experiences you had? Like, and if you don't mind telling us how old you were when it happened.
I'm not one of those people that was like a kid that had a lot of experiences. I mean, I was a sensitive kid and I definitely picked up on a lot, but at the time I just thought everybody did and that it was normal. It wasn't until adulthood when I was able to look back and I'm like, oh, maybe everybody wasn't picking up on all that stuff that was going on around them. But like in terms of communing with like the dead, that didn't really deepen until probably I had an experience 4 years ago, and that's what launched me into intentionally like developing the skill to be able to do that. And I've always pretty much known I was a psychic. I mean, things before they happen. That kind of helps you figure that out. So I spent a long time in that realm, but didn't really do anything with it. But during the pandemic, I just made a big shift in my life. I think a lot of people did and started diving into that a lot more because I had more time on my hands. I couldn't do the normal things I was usually doing. My job and things I did outside of work all shifted, and I'm like, I guess I'll focus on this. That felt like it was right. And I started working with clients psychically and doing readings and helping people out and getting training and development just because it's fun to go to circles and learn stuff and talk to people who have been doing it for longer than you. And I really do believe that developing your skills is really helpful and important. But it was doing a psychic reading that I started to communicate with I had a spirit communicator come through, but I didn't exactly know that's what was happening at the time. It was the client that cued me in to the shift in what was going on in the reading, and she's like, "Whoa, you just brought through so and so," and I was like, "I don't know how to do that. I have no clue how to do that. What are you talking about? I'm not a medium." She's like, "Well, you just did it." And that's when it dawned on me like, "Oh, you can pursue this. You can learn more about it. You can see how far you take it. What are you able to do?" And I think I might have been limiting what I was capable of without actually realizing that I was, just sort of by saying, I can only do these things. I can't do all this other stuff. So I found a place called the Oak Bridge Institute. It's a grounded, practical place, and began to develop my mediumistic abilities, and from that have been able to do a lot of work with the public and just develop the skill. Like, how do you commune with the dead? How does one go about doing that? How does it work? How do you get good at it? How do you get specific? How do you get accurate information? And really, over the last 4 years, put a lot of time and energy into learning exactly how to do that, and playing around with it, being curious, having fun. Like, one of my favorite things to do is to go to different places and just see what I can pick up on energetically, like who lived there, what went on in that space, and then research it to see if I'm accurate. Just to be like, oh, was that information that I picked up on accurate or evidential? I like the evidential component of being able to validate the information that comes through as actually being maybe true or factual, rather than just like oh, you knew this person in a past life, and kind of like soft stuff. Like, if people are into that,
Yeah.
great, fine, whatever. But I'm like, I want some talk about the Scully vibe. Like, I want some evidence. I want some cold hard facts. I want to be able to validate this. So I'm curious, but I'm also skeptical about a lot of things. And so it's fun to dance between the two of those vibes and find a way forward. So that's kind of in a nutshell how it started for me. I had no idea I could do this, like none.
And it turns out that way for a lot of people. A lot of people have no
Yeah.
idea they could have this ability, and then one day you're just awakened.
Yep. Mhm.
Which I mean, yeah, they say everybody has some kind of ability they can awaken. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know. I have no idea if it's true or not. I would
Mhm.
like to think it's true, but
I think it's true. I think if it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. But what I will say is everybody's had like an intuitive knowing or a nudge where they got a knowing and ignored it and then wish they had listened to it. Like, that's your intuition, that's your quote psychism. So it's there for all of us. It's just, do you want to pay attention to it? Do you want to intentionally develop? Do you want to work with it? Do you want to work with the public? Do you just want to do it with yourself? I think I think that there's some level of choice in that. I think some people have, like, those people who start really young when they're really little and they're just like, it just comes to them and they see spirits or they're doing whatever. Like, I don't know if necessarily they have as much choice in it, but for me, I did. I made the decision. I'm like, I'm doing this. I'm gonna do it.
yeah, I mean, I've heard both. I've heard both sides. I've heard people who are just their families have done it for generations, and they just get
Oh
taught at a
yeah.
young age how to do it. But I've also heard the ones like you who had to go practice on their own and learn on their own how to get into it. And it just
Yep.
doesn't seem like any road is really easier than the other. Or I mean, each road
No.
is has its own faults and perils. But
Oh yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine being some Sixth Sense type kid able to see dead people. Like that'd be years of therapy, years of therapy.
I know,
But
I'm glad that that didn't happen to me, and maybe my some of my people in my line or lineage or ancestors did have the skill and ability, but, I they all died, like, when I was really young, so I didn't have access to that knowledge or those histories, and, that's something that I pursue now and I'm interested in now, but I don't have elders that I can go to. My grandparents passed when I was, young, and I didn't get any of those stories, so I have no idea. Maybe they were. I wouldn't know because I have no way of anybody telling me that.
yeah, which is always a difficult thing in life too when you
It
can't
was
get the
sad.
information you need.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
and of course,
I've
no one wants
intuited
to.
some things. Like, I've intuited some of it, I can sense into my we can all do this, into my lineage, but I can't validate it, I can't prove it.
Yeah, too bad you can't find like an old diary or journal or something. But
No, I did actually recently find a book of old photos for my mother's father, who I never met because he died when she was only 8, and it was really interesting because I'd go to mediumship development circles where we practice on each other, and he's come through a lot, but I could not validate any of the information for the medium who was reading me. I'm like, maybe that's, I know the name is right, but all this other stuff, like I never met the man, I don't know. And after I found that box, I was like, "Oh my god, everything that they said was true." So it was kind of fun to find the box and then be able to think back at those readings and look at my notes from them and be like, "Yep, they gave me actually accurate information that I just couldn't validate at the time." It was that just happened to me last week actually, and I'm still kind of like giddy about it.
oh, I don't blame you. I would be too. But you mentioned psychism before.
Mhm.
What? I mean, not the first time I'm hearing the word, but never really got a chance to talk about it on this show. So I figure this is a good
Oh, cool.
opportunity.
Well, I think it's actually a good thing to talk about because I don't know about you, but people are like, "I'm a psychic, I'm a clairvoyant, I'm a psychic medium, I'm an intuitive." I'm like, what's the difference? Like, what does that mean? Like, I don't know. So for me, and this is how I would approach it, and this is just, I'm probably not the only one that thinks this, but psychism is just working psychically. So you're not working with the dead. It's just like sit here with you and I pick up on information by softening and expanding my awareness, and then I can pass that information on to you, and hopefully it's helpful for you on your journey. So it's me, you, and that just kind of reading the energy. It's that's the cut and dry response. And mediumship, there's a third party, so you can think it's me, you, and a spirit communicator, or maybe a couple spirit communicators, and they give me the information and I pass it on. So mediumship for me, it's like nice to have somebody just give me the information and pass it on, but it's challenging in the sense that I have to say a lot of weird things that don't make any sense to me to my sitters, and just be a pure conduit of what's to me is random information, but it makes sense to them. Whereas psychism, I feel like it's just different. It has a different feel, it has a different vibe. For me, it's not as necessarily as cut a straightforward process, but that's just for me. It's a little bit more like I don't work as quickly when I'm working psychically, but when I'm working mediumistically, the information comes fast, furious, quick, and usually pretty specific. And it's fun because a mediumistic reading can feel psychic when the spirit communicator gives me information about you and your life instead of about them. They'll be like, "Oh, I know this is going on with you, and this is going on with you." People will be like, "Whoa, that is happening to me." So they just are two different intuitive healing modalities. That's kind of how I frame it for people. There's just different intuitive healing modalities, and psychicism and mediumship are two of them. I include like divination is also a potential intuitive healing modality. So, like the Lenormand cards, tarot cards, oracle cards can help you build a bridge to your intuitive self and get information. They're not always, divination is got its own dimensions to it. So they're not, sometimes like card readers are just straight reading cards and they're not really using their intuition that much at all. That's it could be academic. And then others work more intuitively. So there's always a spectrum when you're engaging with these different different tools, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually, I mean, I never heard anyone really call it psychism, but I've talked to a lot of people who use spirit guides when they give readings. And usually, from what I've seen and the random readings I've gotten from people over the years, it seems like the ones with spirit guides tend to have a little more insight.
Yeah, I know that that's kind of where it's like maybe they're helping me and maybe they're not. I don't know. Like I can sense my spirit guides when they're with me, and I know that there's different ones that come and help me do different things. Like I know that there's one, they have like a tone or an essence. The way I describe spirit guides might be different than the way other people think about it. Is I don't lean into what's their name or what do they look like or where they come from as much as how do they feel when I know they're with me? Like how do I know they're there? And the analogy that well, they're always with us, but you just expand your awareness to bring them into your sphere of awareness when you are wondering if they're near. Um, It's like when a person walks into a room and they have a vibe and you can feel their vibe. That's the same with your spirit guides. It's actually the same with spirit communicators. As you soften your awareness, you become passive and receptive instead of like zeroing in and focusing on something. And I can feel their essence draw near to me. And so there's one that I like to tell the story about. It's has a specific, I call it like a tone or a feeling that I'm like, oh, I know what guide that is, because I'm a musician. And so like energy has, like, you know how you play a certain chord on an instrument, it gives you a feeling.
Yep.
Like that's the same thing with energy or with spirit guides, at least for me. So I can feel this like tone in my body and I'm like, oh, I know which spirit guide is with me. And every time they come near, um, I don't even have to open my mouth. Clients will just look at me and they'll usually have a big emotional shift or an emotional release, because I know this guide helps people move emotion. Usually there's crying, but in the best way possible, and a huge release. And they'll be like, I don't even know why. I just looked at you and I just all of a sudden had this emotional release. And I'm like, I know, I'm not surprised. And I usually ask them, do you feel better now? And they're like, I feel so much. I feel so much better. I didn't know I had all the stuff pent up in me, and I don't do anything. I just know that guide comes close because they must know that these people need that, and the energy moves. So I know that I have different ones that help me with different things. And to be honest with you, depending on who's coming forward, like I don't know who I'm working with client wise. I don't know what's going to happen from session to session. I just have to kind of roll with the process and be very open to whatever happens is going to happen.
So, which makes sense. I mean, it does make sense, and it's I don't know. I feel like if I walk into a psychic and they're telling me, "Oh, I was expecting to see you today. This is going on with you," I'm gonna be like, "All right, you're full of shit." I'm gonna be like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
how could you know exactly every detail that's going on with me at this moment in time? Like that's just
No, and sometimes people think I will like they feel weird because they're like, or if I'm just like in public and people are like, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, I'm an evidential psychic medium. They're like, get away from me. Like, because they don't want me to like, they think I'm going to download all this information about them. And it's like, technically, can I do that? Yes. Do I run around doing that all day? No, because I have other things to do and I don't spend all my time and energy like doing that. I save it up for my job and for my work. So I like turn it on and I turn it off. And I can't predict the lottery numbers, but I sure wish I could. Like I
don't
don't
we all?
I
Don't
can't
we
do
all?
that.
Yeah, but predicting lottery, that'd be freaking amazing.
It
I
would
would
be.
love to do that.
Me too. It's like it's funny because I have predicted a few things or just known a few things, and um it's not always appropriate to say all the things that you know is another thing I've learned. Like some things it's just better to keep it to yourself, and other things I feel like it's appropriate to share. But there's a little bit of a burden that can come with that, like knowledge of knowing certain things are going to come along or happen before they do.
Yeah, I mean it's premonition. Premonition's always a good thing when it happens. Usually, there are certain
Mhm.
things you don't want to know about before they happen. You're like, if you find out relatives, if you find out a dream that a relative's gonna die, and then they do, you're just kind of like, okay. Then you're stuck in that paradox of, could I
What are you
prevent
going to do
this?
with that? Like, what are you going to do about that? So I've actually had a lot of people ask me about stuff like that, is like, and I tell them, for me in the work that I do, and other people might have a different experience, the information that I get is never intended to scare anybody, but to make them aware. So do I have to have difficult conversations with people sometimes? Yes. Do I try to have like a code of conduct and ethics around the way that I work and how that goes down with the clients? Yes. But I've never been given a piece of information that I felt was gonna cause somebody like harm, extra anxiety, or worry. Um, but I have had clients come to me and tell me that they have had an experience like that where maybe the practitioner um, didn't treat them maybe in a way that was appropriate and terrified them.
Well, yeah. I mean, not everybody has those people skills really. Some people just think
It's
they can.
true.
Some people think it doesn't matter. They can just say what they want to say, and no one's gonna care.
It's a true thing in the spiritual, kind of entrepreneurial world. Like, you might be a great psychic medium, but it doesn't mean that you work well with other people or maybe present things in a way that's in integrity or ethical. Like I know this is super popular. I wonder what you think about this, Jeremy. Is like those people that are like, I've got this dead celebrity here and this is what they're telling me. And it's like, you don't have consent from the family to do that. You can't validate any of that information. So why are you like, what's the point? But they get a lot of attention from doing stuff like that. And I don't know how helpful that is to anybody. And I kind of, I'm personally not into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it either. And hey, Nicole, thanks for checking out the show again. And I love when you share my show. I do. Always nice. I mean, I'm kind of famous on the show for talking about the biggest douche in the universe, John Edwards,
Oh,
because
John Edwards, tell me more.
I mean, I think South Park nailed that completely when they said he's literally the biggest douche in the universe because he does the cold calling bullcrap that was so not true. Like it was just.
He was one of the first psychic mediums I ever encountered, and in fact, James Van Prague and like John Edwards and Gordon Smith and those folks. And obviously now Tyler Henry's really, really popular. But my first exposure to seeing psychic mediums in action was on the Oprah show. Like I'd come home from school, I'd do my paper out, I'd get home, and that's like we didn't have cable growing up. We didn't have a ton of money. So I had regular TV and I'd like that was like Oprah or the news. So I would watch that. And that's actually my first experience watching how it worked. Like I had read about it in books and stuff like that, but I had never like seen anybody do the work. And I think that's true for a lot of people. You see something on what used to be television, now it's probably more inclined towards social media, and you'd see it and you'd be like, is that real? Is that how, and you don't have any way of knowing it. Is it real? Are they really operating in an ethical way? Because most of us don't have a background in that, but you think it's really cool. It looks pretty remarkable and it looks really cool. I know that he's built a whole network now and even has an app. I know about that, but I don't subscribe to the app because
Yeah,
I just don't want to. But
I just hated the shows he used to do in the early 2000s,
I
like where he would
remember
just.
them.
I hate them. But even as a kid, I'm like, this cannot be real. I'm like, he is just he's hinting around, waiting for someone to jump up and say something so he could go lead off it and just go to something else. I mean,
I think that I think he's really a psychic medium, but there's one thing that he does that I'm always curious about is because he always gets names at first. He'll be like, I've got a John, and like start with names. I never get names that quickly. So the way I might get a name, but I've noticed like when I watched him work. In fact, it's funny you bring him up because I've just been thinking about him. I saw him on the internet live, and I hadn't watched him work since the shows that you mentioned. And I was like, oh, I'm going to watch this and see what happens. And I was like, oh, that's the way he works is very different than me. I'm not criticizing it. It's just very different than me. I'm like, wow, I don't get super specific names right away. Usually I get a person's personality or their essence or just the relationship to the person first. I don't dive in. I just noticed that about the way that he works. And I thought that it was kind of interesting.
I mean, from the way I always saw it, he never got full names. Even he would just be, oh, I am sensing a name that starts with a K. It starts with a K, and like somebody would jump up and be like, oh, my wife's name was Karen. Like, and
Yeah.
it's just like.
Oh, I see what you're talking about. Yeah, that's not probably the. I mean, I wouldn't.
I feel like he planted people in the audience too, though.
Maybe we'd have to dive
I
into
mean,
that. Well, there is a thing called platform mediumship, and it's a way for mediums to demonstrate how mediumship can work, and the intention is to demonstrate mediumship. And the idea is people come and the medium doesn't know them and they're not given any information, and then they begin to read. And sometimes you will get multiple people being able to receive the information that you're getting. Um, you know, you could say, I have a dad here, I feel this, or you feel this, and you could have like 5 people in the room be able to take that. And as a medium, you have to be able to keep going and keep going and keep going until you have to keep giving information until you can zero in and get to the sitter that you're actually reading for. So you get all this information, and it's hard. I have to tell you right now, Jeremy, it's hard. That is hard to do. It's hard to do. But and that's a skill in and of itself. Like, I work with people one-on-one. I haven't done platform mediumship yet. I hope that I can get to that level of skill and ability. I feel like I have a little bit more work to do before I do that, but I work with people one-on-one, so I don't have to worry about that, and I definitely don't know anything
Yeah.
about them by the time they work with me, and, um, that makes my job easier, to be
Oh yeah. I
honest.
mean,
Makes it
I
so much
don't know.
easier.
I don't know. I mean, everybody knows that in the paranormal fields, there's a lot of
Yeah,
phonies and fakes out there, and just
it's true.
even some of the ones that are real are just not good people. But
It's
as we said
true.
earlier,
That's actually something that really breaks my heart because at in part of my job, like, sometimes I'll go and I'll get readings or see tests, not test people out, but, like, see, because 'cause I'm trying to figure out, like, who can, like, what if I need to refer a client? How can I build a referral list? But you check people out, you do your due diligence, and sometimes that means you get a reading from them, and there are a couple of things I've observed, and this is what kind of steers me in my work, to be honest with you, that there are some people who are good psychic mediums, but they don't have the greatest of people skills and maybe do things that are not necessarily ethical. Or you have people that are a psychic medium, but they still scam people. Like, they'll do certain things on the internet or do that celebrity thing. And I'm like, I don't know if that's really helping the industry move it forward in a healthy way. Or you have people that literally aren't, and they're doing that weird thing, like, where they message you and be like, I've sensed something about you.
oh,
You need
those are just
to,
pure scammers. Pure
ah,
scammers.
and there's so much of it. And what irritates me is, like, if people interact with me online, people in per I'm not, look, I don't have a huge following, and I don't want one online, to be honest with you. I don't really care. But as soon as they interact with me, then they'll tell me, like, now people are trying to scam me, and I'm like, ignore them and block them. Do not respond to that stuff. So I try to spend a lot of time educating people, like, don't respond to messages like that. If you want to work with somebody, they should be able to tell you what their development is, what their background is, what their ethics are, what their values are. They should be open to a 10 to 15 minute discovery call before you make a several $100 investment in a session with them, things like that. And fair enough. Like, I feel like people are hurting or in need, or they want wisdom, or they want help, and they want support, and there might be in a bit of a vulnerable place. People will prey on that. People will do predatory things to earn a couple of bucks, and that's messed up to me. And so, one of the things that I kind of a pillar of the work I do at my business is I want to raise the standard of care in the industry. I want to kind of provide some guidelines that maybe we can all look for when we're working for with practitioners, so it's not so to help people be conscious consumers and things like that. Because I don't know, you a lot of harm can be done, and that makes me sad. I don't like to see that.
Yeah, I mean, and people are just starting to believe in the paranormal fields more than ever. And
Yep,
people like that are just saying that they're saying it backwards by what it was 30, 20 years ago. Like it's just
it's true. Yeah, it's
don't
really
ruin a good,
true.
don't ruin a good thing, folks. Like don't ruin a good thing. That's about when the world finally starts to embrace this stuff. You're gonna scare them all back.
Well, you know what I think happens? And for some reason, this thought dawned on me right before we met. Um, it becomes a consumer thing, a consumer culture thing. And I think consumerism, well, I take money for the work that I do. I've spent
Of
years
course.
developing my skill and ability, but I it's not predatory or, like, you know what I mean? Like, and I feel like in the spiritual community, things become commercialized and capitalism gets in there, and then people are just making money. And I think we've seen that with um, people buying tons of crystals, or not that I'm anti doing any of that. I'm not anti anything. I'm just like, let's take the middle path here and be mindful about what we're consuming, or the white sage thing, and people just selling things as commodities to make money and not thinking about, why am I doing this? Why do people need it? What's the intent behind it? Am I engaging in cultural appropriation? Because we all know the New Age spiritual community does a lot of that. And it's kind of a tricky world to navigate. I know that I've had my own challenges uh, with it, for sure. And sometimes I even feel like, even as a professional in this space, I'm like, God, I hope I'm not doing anything like, I don't want to do messed up stuff. So I'm
Yeah.
constantly reevaluating myself. Probably too much. I'm probably swinging too far the other way sometimes, I wonder. But mostly rather than like call people out, I try to just kind of be a model and call people in, and if they have questions, like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about this stuff and be open. That's why I really liked your podcast and your network, is because you're really open to talking about all the things, just having an open dialogue and conversation about stuff. And I think that conversations, and perhaps this is the reason why podcasts are so popular, are a great way to explore ideas. And you don't have to know all the
Exactly.
answers, and you don't have to come to a conclusion. You can just be thinking about stuff and pondering it and wondering. We don't have to end at a place where this is it, like this is the way. Because we all know where that can lead people.
Yeah, I mean, it's all paranormal podcasting usually should be is just hypothesizing and just people having educational discussions about topics. It shouldn't
Mhm.
be. It shouldn't. I mean, there's way too much infighting in the paranormal community between paranormal investigators, between people on the spiritual side of psychic mediumship, and every other name for it out there. There's too much infighting between people. Like, oh, don't go to this one. And I mean, I see posts all the time of like people trying to blow up like psychics that supposedly wrong them, and I'm just like, sometimes I'm like, yeah, okay, that was deserved. I read it, it's deserved. Sometimes I'm like, you're blasting this person for no reason really,
I've
because
seen
you
a
didn't like
lot of
something.
that too. It's sad. Like, I don't, yeah, people, well, you know what? I wonder what you think about this, but I've noticed that a lot of people, and this is probably stating the obvious, but people who are like psychics and mediums are really sensitive to people, and they take things really, really personally sometimes. So, and sometimes people feel that like, oh, I have 20 years of experience, this is the way and this is how it needs to look, and maybe people are not doing it exactly like that, and they feel like they need to police other people. And I don't know that that works. I don't know if that method really works, of being calling people out and fighting online about it. Like I said, for me, it's more of provide some tools for education to the public and be the model. Just demonstrate the good work by being you and doing it your way. And guess what? Some people will like it and some people won't. And that's fine. That's it, it
It,
doesn't, so you don't have to be the best one.
I feel like that's the same in every field though, whether paranormal or just not even non-paranormal fields. Like, there's always going to be the old dogs who don't want to learn the new tricks, and there's always going to be
Yeah,
the new youngins who find their own ways to succeed, and the olders don't like it because they didn't think of it when they were young. That's what it
exactly.
is.
Yeah. It's so funny because um I don't know, like you said, I think that that appears in a lot of different areas. And I think that when it comes to spirituality or the paranormal world, like, does anybody like know for sure exactly like
No,
what's going on for sure, for sure? I mean, obviously I've communicated and been doing like with the deceased and brought forward messages for 3 years. I've been working as a medium and a psychic a little bit longer than that. But would I ever tell you I know everything about, I still am surprised every time it happens, or every time I'm still shocked every time I go to do it. I'm like, "Is this gonna happen? Is
I,
this gonna work?" I don't know, because I
I,
literally nothing can happen. I mean, because 'cause I'm not in control, so, I'm
I
surprised
mean,
every time, and I think it's just the way it is.
I say it on the show all the time. It's my theory on any paranormal topic. My theory on it has evolved 20 times at least since I started this show, because
Exactly.
I keep getting fed new information that makes me look at it from different angles. And I'm like, wait a minute, god damn it, now I got to rewrite the book. But
Mhm.
it's just one of those things. It's like I keep saying too, I gotta write a book, and I want. There's gonna be multiple versions of it over the years, I'm sure, but I want to write a book about my theory of the world.
That's
And
really interesting. Yeah, I think you should do it.
if I can find the time, I
Add it to
surely
your list
will.
of
But
things to do. Yeah. Add it to the list. But it's one of the things that for me is evolving is it is, you mentioned spirit guides, like my understanding of them and how they work and stuff like that, because it's hard, it's a hard thing to validate. But I actually have a good story I could tell you about validating a spirit guide, which I did not think was ever going to happen to me. It was early in my journey of mediumship and finding other mediums to practice and play with and do whatever. And I meditate every day. It's a specific kind of meditation that helps you with your awareness and how to shift it so you can pick up on dead people, basically. Um, and I was in meditation and I felt someone come near me, and I got a name and I got information about this person. And I was like, what is that? And I just wrote it down and I'm like, what the hell? And I was actually trying to commune with my spirit guides. And I'm like, this can't be right. And I kind of poo-pooed it and moved on. Like, I let it happen. I documented the experience and I moved on, as we do with paranormal things. We document, move on, see what happens. And then I went to a development circle and this medium started bringing forward this information. She's like, this is really strange. I've got this information. She passed on the data about this spirit guide who had been here on Earth and who he was on Earth and all the information about him. And I was just shocked. And she's like, but he seems really old. Like, there's no way you could have ever known this person. Like, I can tell that they're with you all the time though. And she's like, this is weird, because she had never done anything like this either. And I'm like, yeah, I think it's the spirit guide that I just met. And he just wanted to let me know that he did have a life here and here's what it looked like, but he's not had a life for a long time, blah, blah, blah. And how he works with me, how he helps me. And honestly, knowing his name hasn't really changed my relationship with the energy that he presents. I don't think of him as a person or a human being, if that makes sense. But anyway, she gave me this information and I told her, I was like kind of surprised. I'm like, well, this is not a person that I've known. And I told her about this meditation that I did and how I came to know this guide. And she's like, wow, that's really remarkable. And I told her, I don't know, is it? I don't know if I believe in this. Like, I'm still really confused about this experience. And then they're on the wall right over here in the corner. There's nobody in the house. There's no thing that could have hit the wall. There was no way. It was like through the wall. There was like a boom right when I was like, I don't think I believe in this. A boom on the wall. And she heard it too. And we were like, what? And then I have like an altar, and some of the things I had on the altar flew off the altar space. And I was like, well, I'm not going to doubt the presence of this guide that's with me ever again, because I do get the sense that it's hard for, oh, there's a bald eagle and that's a sign of my guide too. This just flew right through the yard. I'm like, yeah, he does that. Every time I doubt, he always gives me a sign. And that's one of the things that he does, is because I do fall into doubt. I think we all do. Like, this stuff is pretty remarkable, and our rational mind always is telling us it can't be. But then I always get some kind of validation that, no, I'm here and I'm with you and I'm helping you. But anyway, we both got kind of a kick out of that, because it was a pretty, at least for me, remarkable experience that made me realize, like, no, you don't. Evidence and validation is important. Obviously, I've said that
Oh,
times, but sometimes we just have to accept that there's magic and miracles in the world, and just let them
well,
be what they are.
before I block this person, examples of scams from psychics.
Oh, there you go. Yep. Mm-hmm. Oh
To
my
three
god.
different people.
I'm so sorry that you have to deal with that. It's annoying.
I I usually don't, but
I
that's
told you
okay.
it happens anytime people interact with me. I don't know. The scammers just start flooding in.
Yeah, well, they've been blocked, so no worries. But I take care of them right away because I hate people like them on Instagram and all that. Like,
Oh,
I
so
don't.
annoying.
I think I started to fall for it once, and then I just like realized right away, like, okay, this is a scammer. I'm like, I'm done. Block them,
Mhm.
and just anytime I see one of
Mhm.
those messages come through, it's just like, yeah,
Oh,
no, you don't got
instant
nothing.
just instant block, and if people are watching and they saw that, like, take a cue from Jeremy and instant block that crap.
Yeah, it's just funny we were talking about it because I'm on the show. That's perfect.
I know,
I
I
couldn't I,
told
cou-
you.
I couldn't have planned that. I couldn't have planned that.
Nope.
But God, love it. So you're an intuitive healer too, and I'm kind of curious about, because I
Yeah,
talked to healers before, of course.
yeah.
What kind of healing is it? Is it body healing, mind healing,
Well,
or a
I would
combination?
it's spiritual, emotional, physical, mental. It's all aspects of self, really. But what I do is I help people connect with their intuition and their intuitive self, and sort of, um, there is a spiritual teacher and poet named John O'Donohue. He's from Ireland. I really like his work, and he always says that life, in essence, is a practice of coming home to ourselves. And so there's a lot of reasons why maybe we don't trust our intuition or are having a hard time with our lives. And a lot of those things we can actually address through some. I How do I describe this? I essentially take the things that I've learned working as a psychic and a medium and developing that skill set to be able to get information and to help myself out, not necessarily working with clients, because that's how I started, was just trying to help my own life. And then teach other people how to do it. And I take people through some processes where we tap into the body and kind of feel into things and then journey with sensations that come up through the body. It's kind of hard to describe, but once people have experienced it, it makes a lot more sense. It's just the way that this type of work works. Not to be elusive. I'm not trying to be elusive at all. And it helps them release emotional pain, which in turn often releases physical pain, which makes you feel better. Limiting beliefs, believe it or not, yeah, they're in the mind, but they also are stored in the body. So I lean into, I guess I hesitate to call it energy healing. I don't really know what to call it, but I can feel what's going on with people and then help them go there through my guidance to release, acknowledge, feel into that part of themselves so that it can evolve or heal. Does that make sense? I'm not a therapist. I don't want to say that, but it's kind of like people will tell me, it's like I feel like I got energy healing and therapy at the same time, and I don't know how else to explain it. And they'll usually tell me I feel lighter, I feel more myself, I feel a greater sense of like kind of emotional freedom. I don't feel as bound up or restricted. And it's actually pretty practical stuff. It's not that woo woo. I love things that are unknown and stuff like that, but the techniques and tools that I use are not new. A lot of them have come from, I don't know, they're not new. And they often are rooted in some spiritual practices, but also in psychologists. There's a blending that happens there, by the way, with psychics and mediums and psychology and stuff like that. People don't
Oh
really
yeah.
know what I'm talking about, but and it's not new. A lot of these things have been around for a long, long, long ass time, and um, but I lean into my intuition. Like I don't come into this and say I'm going to assess you or do this or that. I just fall into a passive and receptive state, guide the process and guide the client, and they are really doing the healing for themselves. And I teach them how to do it so they don't become dependent on me. They can go incorporate it into their practices if they want, or they can continue to work with me over time. It's my preference not to just do one and done readings with people. Mediumship, yes, because you get the spirit communication and you can move on. But like the psychic intuitive stuff, I don't know how effective it is to think that in an hour session you're going to get all the things that you need, especially at least in sessions with me, because a lot comes up. A lot of different things are going to come up, and then you have all this information and you just send a client, be like, good luck with that, good luck with all of that, have fun. I don't, have fun with that. I got my first reading when I was 19 and it changed my life. And I felt really at loose ends afterwards because a lot of the stuff that came up started to happen and started to evolve in my life. And then I felt like, not that I needed answers or I needed a psychic to tell me what was going on, but I wanted to be able to move with those shifts and changes in an intuitive way so that I could take mindful action. Does that make sense? And so that's what I try to help people with is you get this knowledge, I give it to you, you get it on your own in some ways in sessions as well. Now, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to incorporate it into your life? Do you want to incorporate it into your life? Do you know how to listen to your intuition and then take mindful action? Because I think that there's this preconceived notions that psychics are just going to predict everything for you and then it's going to unfold, when in reality, there are components of being predictive, but a lot of it is a psychic medium can just pick up on a lot of you and how you are and your personality without you having to tell them anything. And that kind of takes the burden off you. It's like, yeah, I know you got a lot going on. It looks like this, this, and this. And then you can just be like, yeah, that's it. The next step for me is, how do you deal with that? How do you want to deal with that in your life? What are the pathways forward? And I don't think there's enough emphasis put on that, if that makes sense.
Exactly. I mean, it does because I mean, it's not like it is in the movies or TV shows where psychics going to tell you exactly. Even if police go to a psychic, they're not going to tell them exactly where the body's hidden. They're not going to tell them
Nope.
exactly who did the crime. Like it's just they may push them in the right direction slightly, but it's up to the people receiving the information to use that information correctly. I mean,
Mhm.
you can go to a financial planner and he's not going to just tell you, oh, if you invest in this stock, you're going to be rich. No.
Mhm.
He's just say, okay, well, these are some good ones that are going on right now. You may put your money in one, you may lose everything you have in it. I mean, it's just
What
the way
yeah,
the
and
world works.
I do like to help people with decision making, but ultimately the decision is up to them and they have free will, right? They can pick and choose how things are gonna go. And I do there are people who'll be like, you predicted this and that's that's great. And then like I had a situation where I like a lot of times people come about relationship stuff, which is fine. Like
Of
I get
course.
it. Who doesn't need help with that? But and it was like, whoa, like, you'll definitely there's someone's coming in and you're definitely going to have a union. I'm like, there's definitely going to be a partnership and a commitment. But then they'll be like, yeah, that happened. And then they'll use the session as a validation to stay with somebody because I'm like, yeah, union's going to come in. You guys are going to make a connection, and then they'll use it to like stay with somebody that maybe isn't the best person for them. It's like I didn't say stay with them. I said a new person is coming in and they're going to come in hot and you're going to have to figure out how to navigate that. And then it's like they came in and I just like threw all my eggs in one basket. It's like and then use the session to
Sure.
like justify like why they did what they did. And it's like, well, you made that choice to like
I,
get married to somebody that isn't nice to you, for example. Because these things happen. Anyway, I don't know if that was a good example or not, but I think
oh
maybe
no,
what I'm saying, people will
it
use
is.
sessions to validate things in their lives and make it fit because it's what they think they want, and it's like that's not what happened. That's not what the session was really about. Does that make sense? But it's what they make it because they want something or they're grasping for something or they're desiring something, and that's where we as psychics and mediums have to be like working psychically in particular have to be very conscientious in the way we use our words and the way that we say things, if that makes sense. Like be mindful with our speech.
Well, yeah, because there are those who are so reliant on everything in the world trying to tell them what to do that I mean,
Yes.
the type of people that will take a fortune cookie seriously, and
Yes.
it's just, I mean, if you're gonna go marry your guy or go invest all your money in something or play a lottery because the fortune cookie tells you good things will come your way today, like that's
Right.
just stupidity. That's not the universe is not giving you signs. These are mass produced in a freaking factory somewhere in China. Like no,
Yeah. And I wonder what I'm like. I keep saying, I wonder what you think about this because I love to talk about this stuff, and I don't get to talk about it as maybe as often as I'd
oh,
like to. But
I
people obsessing over angel numbers all the time, like have numbers guided me before and like given me a sign or a validation of something? Yeah, but like the angel number thing, and where people are like 333 111 1212, like, and just like really leaning into all of that stuff. I'm like, listen, maybe pump the brakes a little bit on that. Not that symbols and signs are not valid. Like I'm not saying that, but like I think you know what I'm talking about, where people are like, if this reading comes across your page, it's for you, and they've got all the angel numbers and all this stuff and all this stuff, and you need to hear this message. It's like, no, I don't. And that message is not for me. It's just general stuff about life that most of us are facing. It's like that's not again, like I don't think that demonstrates channeling or intuitive work, all of that well. And I have had people tell me when they listen to me talk about this stuff, like, she's so condescending about it. And I'm like, I'm just practical. Like I told you I was skeptical and curious. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, you have to be. I do not trust anybody in the paranormal world who is not some kind of skeptic in the same way. If you're
Right.
just going to be, I mean, even Fox Mulder was skeptical in some ways. You can't
He was.
even even the I want to believe spokesperson was not a true, like, always believer. He saw the signs and things that they're pointing out to him. So I mean, it's just
Exactly.
You
And
can't
again,
believe everything that happens.
I feel like again, it's like I like the idea of the middle path and like not going to extremes. I think, and this is something that I learned from being like studying yoga and the yogic scriptures and also some Eastern philosophies and reading that is like attachment and aversion. Like when we're really averse to something and we're like, it can't be, or when we're really attached to something like it has to only be this, that's probably not going to get us where we want to go. And again, like dancing somewhere in between the two feels like you're going to have a more in-depth experience. And I think as soon as you think you know, like you mentioned earlier, you don't. You find out as how much you don't know. So we can't just hold on to this sense of like, oh, I know now. I have the answer. This is the way. Because as soon as we get like that, like I think we can find ourselves in some trouble. And usually we'll get knocked off our darn high horse and learn otherwise.
Oh, first things first. Nobody should be saying that this is the way unless they're from Mandalore. So get past that.
Here, here.
and and I mean, yeah, it's there's always going to be people like that, and we can't change that. But
Nope.
by getting messages like this out, oh, maybe some people maybe will change their minds and be like, all right, maybe I need to stop just thinking every time the wind blows it's a spirit, like
Hmm.
or every time.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there are people like that who believe that everything they hear or see is something trying to communicate with them. And I'm like, it doesn't happen like that. I mean, I I'm not, that's the biggest thing is I've been told I had empathic abilities. Have I seen actual proof of it? Not 100%. I mean, not 100%. I've seen little things here and there, but I am so skeptical of things. I might have seen things that not even like registered in my head. It might just gone past me like, all right, yeah,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah,
don't
I've
know.
definitely had experiences like that. And, kind of talking about paranormal stuff, like people ask me a lot about ghosts and stuff like that. And um I don't always know what to say about it. I've definitely been in places where things went on. I used to rent a space at a building where I saw clients, and every day, every night, I usually see them in the evening at 6:30. There would be a banging on the wall, like right next to where my clients would sit. Like, and then it would sound like someone was walking upstairs where there were no stairs. And I mean, like every night that I was there, this would happen. And so I had people come down there with me and be like, "Could it be this? Could it be that?" And then finally I was like, "Why don't you?" And I would have to tell clients that this was going to happen so they wouldn't be scared because it was that obvious. I mean, it was, and they're like,
Yeah,
"What's that? Why is it? I just heard footsteps over there." And I'm like, "I know. I don't know I don't know what it is. I can't tell you why. I'm not sure." But then I was like, why don't you use your skills? Like, see if you can figure out what it is." And what came to me was that the building had been remodeled, obviously, but there was like, I call them energetic footprints where people had done repetitious work at the same time every day, the same things. And I was like, listen to the footstep, and I could tell that it was an old shoe because it sounded like a wooden heel on a wooden floor instead of like, how lots of shoes are plastic now. I was like, that sounds like wood on wood. And then I looked at the time frame that certain people were in that building, and that's how shoes were back then. And then I felt into it. I was like, it feels like this is a woman. It feels like there's a man. Okay, what are they doing? And I kind of felt into that. And then I went to the local historical society, looked up the historic building, looked up who lived there, and looked up what I had felt. It was like I felt like it was a mercantile, but also a hotel where people were staying and different things were going on. And sure as shit, like when I went to the historical society, the executive director was like, "Oh yeah, there's a so and so, this woman and this man, and da 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 da." And I was like, "Whoa!" And do I think that their ghosts are there? I didn't feel that. It felt more like when something happens over and over, it leaves an energetic footprint. Does that make sense? Like I felt like there was
oh,
it felt like energy because the same thing kept happening at the same time for literally tens,
yeah.
like decades.
It's it's a residual haunting or residual energy, however you want to call it. It happens. I mean, they had a good name for it, supernatural. I can't think what it is right now, but I but I mean, there's a lot of residual hauntings, especially in bigger cities in America, because it's old memories that just don't
Yeah,
fade away.
that's what it felt like,
Like
old memories that don't fade away. I like that.
the most famous example I've ever heard of is there's an old saloon out in, I think it's Vegas or somewhere in California,
Mhm.
and basically like you could still hear gunshots, you could still hear like the music from like the 1800s, like it's at certain times of the day, like it's just
Uh-huh.
a very haunted location, but
Yeah.
it's the same thing every day. It's just the same thing every day because it's just energy that never left.
Yeah,
Because
I went to Scotland and had an interesting experience at Rosalind Chapel. Just basically, I just felt really overwhelmed by the energy there, and it made me feel sick because there's a lot of weird stuff that happened there. Um, a lot of stuff happened there, and then I have had to go. I've traveled down south a lot and felt things in different places down there. I live on the West Coast in the Pacific Northwest in Vancouver, Washington, so it doesn't it has a different energy than maybe like the East Coast vibe does.
oh yeah,
At least it does to me anyway. And um, so I'm kind of interested in those types of things and how I can pick up on information that I can actually go research to see if I can validate it. Because like, what if I went out into the field and heard random music? I'd be like, okay, where can I find that on a map? What was there anything there? Go to the newspaper records, like do some research. That's fun to me. Like that's how I like to spend my time. I'd be like, can I figure that out? Well, that was a weird thing that just happened. I wonder if I can learn more about that. I think that's fun.
yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that I know plenty of people like think it's fun too, and if people think that's fun, then more power to them. I honestly, God, if I don't even have the time to do things I
Oh
want
my
to
gosh, I hard
do.
yeah, I don't I on to be honest with you, I don't have a ton of time for it either, but I do weave it in as I can. Like if, I have a little spot of time here and there rather than scrolling on my phone, if I can do a little bit of research and stuff like that. But I used to also work at the local museum, so I know how to do stuff down there. We have
Yeah.
it's a small local museum. Like it's not a huge institution, it's community funded and everything. And so I used to archive um, artifacts and stuff like that, and they digitized all of their old photographs and everything. So I come by the research thing pretty honestly, and I have a degree in history, so researching is
Oh,
like
there you go.
there
There
you
you go.
go, right? There's your thing. And my dad is a historian and a writer as well who writes articles for the local newspaper. On his He'll find a picture and then he'll write an article about what was going on, and so it's a great way to like I kind of grew up with people that are all writers and researchers, so it's just
Natural. It's a natural
probably
born
why
ability.
I'm just like naturally inclined to want to do those things. So yeah, no,
Well,
I'm not probably not the most exciting.
oh,
I'm a little
it can
bookworm.
be. Like, I mean, hey, people like you are the ones who solve like cold cases from like 40 years ago because you could think of things to do that research that no one else researched.
That's cool. Yeah, who knows? I'm actually interesting. There is a branch in mediumship and psychism where you can get trained to work on cases and stuff like that, but you can't if you do it, you can't talk about it. Like it's not something
Oh, you just, yeah, NDAs and everything. Yeah.
no, you got to keep
Like,
it on the DL. You got to keep it all on the DL. But I think I'm too soft-hearted to do that. I'd get too emo.
yeah, I mean, so depends what it is. I mean, there are certain things that I don't think anybody really wants to work with unless they have to. But
Mhm.
there's a reason. There's a reason that cops go a little bit.
There's a
There's a reason every
woman.
cop needs therapy.
Yeah, that's true. There's a woman, she's pretty well known, Laura Lynn Jackson, who spent a lot of time working with parents who'd lost children, and she did mediumship to help them connect with like their deceased children, and that's really what she spent a lot of time doing because she wanted to help grieving parents. So there's a lot that you can do in the work with like just all different pathways, all different ways that you can help people, and I think that's why I love it so much is because obviously my overarching intention is to be helpful, is to help people.
Of course. I mean, and yeah, there is a lot of different working out there in the psychic field. You just gotta find it. It's not always the easiest thing to find certain things, but
And it's not the
and
easiest way to make a living. I think people should know that too. It's like it
oh,
is
it's not. I mean,
it's not for
most
the
of
faint of heart. It's running a business and doing all this stuff. It's not easy.
most of the ones I know have day jobs too. So it's just a side gig they do until they hope to reach level where they can actually make enough money to live off of it. But
That's right.
it doesn't always work that way. But okay, I didn't see this question coming in this interview, but since you happen to mention you live in the Pacific Northwest,
Mhm.
I gotta ask.
Sasquatch.
Any Yes, of course.
I don't know. I've also when I went to Scotland, I was wondering about Nessie, Loch Ness, and I'm like, "Nessie,
Oh
are
yeah.
you there?" Um, I don't know. I don't have any experiences with the Sasquatch. Do I know about all the tales and stories? Hell
I'm
yeah.
sure.
Do I find
Oh,
them
I'm sure.
super interesting? Yes. I was disappointed to find out that the famous Sasquatch photo was debunked. Did you hear? You probably already know this. The one everybody sees where it's walking and they realize like that really wasn't. They
Uh,
somebody supposedly disproved, and I was like, oh, that's kind of a bummer because I kind of believe in it, and I think it's
you're
fun
not
to
talking.
believe in it.
You're not talking about the Patterson Gimlin film, are you?
I don't even know. Yeah,
The video,
maybe I am. Yeah, or
the
this like
movie.
walking?
It's yeah. It as far as I know, it has not been actually legit disproven. People have been trying for 50 years, but
Oh, good, that makes me kinda happy. I thought it was. I read something, I was like, "Oh, man."
because the one or two of them out of the four that are still living still swear it happened, and one of them even said for years that didn't happen, but then he just recanted, and he was just like, I just got sick of all of the people trying to pay attention to me. He's like, I just
It's
wanted to be
kinda
left
like
alone.
the Fox sisters in the rapping and the spiritualist community, like,
Yes,
that whole thing where it's like they'll say and it also makes me think of I'm sure there's a movie that just came out called Fodor and the Talking Mongoose. Well, I have a book
I've
from
heard of that.
Nando Fodor that it's like a what's it called? Let me see. I have it right here. It's a document. It documents all the psychic phenomena and studies. I think it was originally published in 1934, but he basically tried to find all these things of paranormal stuff that people had been experiencing. He put it in this book, and he did not include the talking mongoose in the book, but maybe that's because it happened after he published it. But there's all these people that are documenting all kinds of things, and I like to read about some of that stuff. And I find the Fox sisters to be really interesting, um, because people
Uh,
said that they were debunked.
Aaron Ma- Aaron Mankey did a podcast series called Lore.
Uh huh. Oh yeah,
Uh,
lore.
yeah, and he did a whole season on spiritualism, and he focused a lot on the Fox sisters. Like that's like what kind of where he started almost.
Yeah,
And
I forgot about that. It's been a long time since I listened to that.
well, actually, maybe it's not. Oh no, it's not Lore. It's another one of his podcasts he does where he does like a season on a whole topic. And his first season was on the Salem witch trials. It was a he does a really good job with it. If you could
I'm into that
listen to
stuff.
his, I am too, but his unobscured. That's what it was called, unobscured.
Oh,
But
okay, cool.
yeah, the second season was about spirituality and spiritualism movement in the 20s and 30s. So
It's the spiritualist movement is pretty fascinating.
it is. There's a lot of different elements to it. I've heard a lot of different podcasts talk about different famous people in it and whatnot. And
Presidents going to seances and things like that.
oh, yeah. I mean, Lincoln and his wife were very into that stuff. So,
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
but
Oh, yeah. Lots of people were.
because at that point it was something completely new. It was something that, but then again, I mean, back in those days, gypsies, or
Mhm,
Romani people, as they should be called,
mhm.
were well known. I mean, people knew about them, but not everybody you rarely got to see them, especially in America. Like
Yeah.
there wasn't until like the 20s, 30s when they first started like migrating
Mhm,
from that part of the world that they started seeing them in America.
mhm.
So I mean, a lot of people heard of them, but they never actually saw them. And the idea of witches back then kind of decreased from like the 1700s. So
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like it used to be. Thank God, because they were doing horrible things to people that they were accusing of things. But different
Right.
times,
Yeah,
different times.
yeah. Mhm. For sure.
But whoa, and then an hour flew by like that. My God.
I
Well,
know.
I do want to thank you for coming on, Emily. It's been an amazing talk. I
Yeah.
mean, as I just said, the hour flew by because we were having such a good
It
conversation.
was
I
really fun.
didn't.
I enjoyed myself a lot.
I'm glad. Why don't you tell all my listeners and watchers where they could find you and everything you do?
Yeah, you can find me at bloomingwand.com. That's my website. And if you need to connect to socials, all of that's there too. I send out a newsletter every other week on full and new moons, just with some helpful life stuff and like tarot curated insights if people are into that. So it's a good way to get to know me and my work and what I do.
Well, there you go, folks. Go check it out. And of course, the link to her site will be in the description as always. But come back on Wednesday. I have another interview Wednesday and Thursday, I believe, this week. So, and actually, those two are going to be interesting. I'm not exactly sure where those ones are going to go, but we'll see. But yeah, two people that reached out to me to be on the show, which doesn't happen too often. But when it does, it's always people who I normally wouldn't go to. But it's, you know, if they got stories to tell, I'll take stories. So, but if all my listeners don't know where to find me by now, just shame on you. But check the outro; it's there as always. Just listen, and you'll see where I am, or just read the bottom of my screen if you're watching. But till then, have a good night, everybody. And remember, don't believe everything that you hear, and don't fall for the damn scams.